Well, we're live. Hi, everybody, and welcome to Coffee with Craig. This is going to be a much more kind of, let's say, a conversational type of video today. The world's going crazy out there, isn't it? I mean, we've got how many elections around the world? 64 countries I know of. When I looked it up, having elections this year, all sorts of divisions in the world, wars going on, everything going a bit crazy. So I'm going to have a chat about quite a few topics today, but I'm going to be mostly taking your questions. I'll make a few predictions probably, but this is more like, let's discuss what's going on. Let's see what's going on in the world. What can we do from a kind of a spiritual standpoint? What can we do about Gaza? What can we do about Ukraine? What can we do? What's going to happen in the UK with the elections going on? What's going to happen in America? Have we seen British values compromised? Have we seen American values compromised? Let's have a talk about some of the things that are happening in the world, and some of the things that are perhaps happening also with things like global liberal authoritarianism, for example, and woke values, and where's it all going? And can we rescue ourselves from all this craziness, So anyway, guys, it's good to see you all again. It's nice that I'm getting a lot of support all the time from you guys. So let's say, welcome to Coffee with Craig. Right, hi everybody. So I'm both the presenter today and also doing the control room. So it might be a bit fiddly when I'm working along, because I'll be seeing your comments down the side of the screen here. And so I'd like this one to be kind of led by you, a lot of it, so have a few thoughts about questions you'd like to ask me. It's so nice to see you guys from all over the world here again. Here we are from Australia. I saw one come up from Bulgaria earlier on, and so it's nice to see again, all pouring in already. So have a think about questions you'd like to ask me today. I'm coming in at a sort of an earlier time of day at the moment, so that gives you all a chance to come in from different parts of the world. So we've got a few more Australians, for example, today, a few more UK people, but we'll address all the issues of the world and where we're going spiritually. So let me just have a chat about a few things. Well, already I see interesting questions coming in here about the next UK prime ministers and things like that. That's obviously going to be very important for UK visitors, and I'll address that as we have a chat. So I put the title of this show is It's a Crazy World, or something like that, and will we make it? Because it worries everybody at the moment, I think, doesn't it? I just recently did a really interesting interview. A few interesting interviews lately. I've been sort of seem to be in demand a lot at the moment. I did a recent one in Japan. I didn't go there, they came here, but it was really interesting. One of the big channels in Japan. It was interesting and raised some quite thought-provoking questions to me. Similarly, I've also just recently, last night, I've just done a pre-record with a really nice channel called Next Level Soul with Alex Ferrari. I don't know if any of you have seen that. Well worth going and subscribing to that channel as well, because it asked some really quite intriguing questions and got me thinking about a few things that I'll talk about here. I'm not going to spoil, obviously, anything that's gone on that show, but also, go and have a look at his channel. But don't forget, if you're new here, subscribe to this channel, and always, guys, give me a thumbs up, please. Give me a thumbs up, because it helps the algorithm when you come off from live or when you've just come on, and a thumbs up always helps. Anyway, that's the advertising out of the way. So let's have a think about some of the things that are happening. I'm going to first have a look at some of the political things that are going on in the world, particularly the fact that we have here in the UK quite an important election happening, our general election coming up in a couple of weeks' time. And a bit like what's happening in America, we're kind of seeing everything turned on its head, because the traditional politics that we've been used to, where the ruling class, I suppose, it's almost like the behind the scenes people have had it easy for a long time. We've suddenly seen sort of huge shifts in public opinion. And frankly, here in the UK, it's exactly the same, I think, as what's happening in so many places in the world, because I know it's the same feeling in Canada. It's the same thing in Australia. It's the same thing in America. We're basically all fed up. What does my granddad used to say? Fed up to my back teeth. Fed up to my back teeth with the way, the complacency of our politicians. And I think this is so dangerous, the way we seem to now have, and put your opinions later, but we seem to have sort of career politicians, don't we, in each country, people with lots of vested interest, and people who seem to be more concerned about their own careers than they are about the welfare of a nation. In fact, the whole thing about nations has become almost, we kind of loathe our countries. We're supposed to loathe our countries. We're supposed to hate our flags. We're supposed to be quite content to wave a Palestinian flag somewhere, but we're not allowed to wave a British flag, or we're not allowed to wave an American flag or anything like that, because you're considered as being nationalistic or racist or far right or far Republican or whatever, if you have any respect for your nation. And our politicians are just like that. They've become a sort of like grey people. They've become people you don't want to vote for any of them, sort of thing. Here in the UK, for example, those joining from America, we've got a sort of political situation where nobody really wants to vote, and so you're voting always for what. I think this is how it works anyway. I think everybody's voting for the least worst option. We've had here the Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, who's called an election a snap election for his own purposes, really. He thought, and it backfired badly, he thought that he had a few things up his sleeve and he could buy the voters by offering this for pensioners and offering this financial incentive to you and this financial incentive to you. And people basically turned around and said, we're not interested in financial incentives. We want to get our country fixed. And they turn and they see the opposition and they think, God, this lot's just as bad as well. They're grey. They don't seem to have any interest in the country either. And meanwhile, we've also got our equivalent here of, I suppose it's our equivalent here of Donald Trump on the rise with Nigel Farage, because he's become quite nationalistic in some ways. I could see him with the slogan, "Make Britain Great Again." He's also big supporter of Donald Trump, but is taking a very, very large percentage of the vote here in the UK, or the polling is saying that. But the problem is we have a kind of a skewered system, really, because, as I said in my predictions earlier on about British elections, this new party, this startup scheme, I suppose it is, it's a Reform's a sort of a startup, but it's doing extremely well in the opinion polls. It's overtaken the Conservatives, but the problem is it doesn't stand much of a chance of getting many seats. So people are voting, or going to vote, I think, for it, despite the fact that they know they're going to get the opposite to what they want. They're going to vote as a protest vote, saying, look, we want to change the system, because it's become what happened with the Conservative Party is they're no longer what people expect. They say they're going to do one thing and they do another. So what's going to happen with all that? First of all, we had all this conflict with Liz Truss. I think she was kind of stitched up by the banks. I think the banks are in the background pulling a lot of strings here. They won't give an interest rate cut because, they can, well, this is more politically important, really. If we give an interest rate cut now, it might give a green flag to the Conservative Party, and everybody might think everything's all right again. Not that they would. And of course, we've ignored the single most important issue, I think, that's on people's mind, apart from the tanking economy, as it were, which is the cultural problems that we have that are caused by immigration at the moment. So there's a huge kind of a big strong interest in Farage and the Reform Party And I do feel that there's going to be quite a lot of people voting for him. I think it will be quite shocking. I think at the same time, my feeling is it's likely to be a Labour government coming up, because the polls are so high up there. They got twice the amount that Tony Blair got. God help us. And the problem is there's this huge shift. So what's been going on? So my thoughts have to go, what's going on here? What's going on in the background? They must be talking in the background. And I've had if you look back at some of my predictions, there's a video out there I did about Nigel Farage. There's a few videos I've done about the UK elections way before they've been called, so that I was getting these things, early feelings about it. And I feel that there's going to have to be a deal done. And you'll notice a prediction that I seem to have got wrong, or have I, is that Rishi Sunak would leave, be taken from the Tory leadership before the election. Now, we've got 2 weeks to go, so I must be wrong with that. Or am I? Could it be that within the next couple of weeks, and it would have to be damn quick, could it be that a deal is done with Reform? Because basically the Tories and don't stand a chance. They don't stand a snowball's chance in hell of getting in as the way things stand at the moment. And because people's leanings are saying, we're fed up with all this wokey, middle of the ground type of politics. We're either going to have a little bit more left leaning with the Labour, because we don't know what they offer, or we want a proper Tory party. So I think there's a deal being done, and it wouldn't surprise me, because I get a feeling there could be something where a deal is done, possibly before, in the next 2 weeks, possibly a merger with Reform and Tories, which would have to ultimately lead to the end of Rishi Sunak, because he couldn't possibly hold on to such huge failures, and the rise of Nigel Farage and some of the more right-leaning type of politicians such as Rees-Mogg and people who all are in danger of losing their seats. Rees-Mogg could lose his seat. Even Rishi Sunak is, they say, in the potential position of losing his seat. Unheard of, a prime minister losing his seat in Parliament. I mean, so I think there's going to be a deal done. It will certainly be done after the election. They'll have no choice. They'll have to do a deal with Reform, because more and more people are going to start to see Reform as the voice of those disenchanted with what's going on in politics. Now, I'm trying not to be to take one side or the other with this, because I just trying to see it as it is. But it strikes me that there's quite a dangerous situation arising here in UK politics, where a political party is going to come in with a complete agenda to do whatever they like, but with a disenchanted general population. The normal public are disenchanted with both sides equally, I think. Because let's have a think about what would happen, just keeping with UK politics for a while. And I know that the same sort of things is happening in America, of course, too, because we've got exactly the same sort of situation, where if you have someone in power at the moment who most of the population in America are completely disenchanted with Biden. They see an old man stumbling along who should be really put in a maximum security twilight home, and in the background all the strings being pulled by ex presidents, particularly Obama. So we see here a wokey sort of agenda in the background running a country where the country itself says, we don't want this. We don't want immigration. And same sort of big issues. We don't want over green policies and so forth. And the same thing's happening in the UK. Exactly the same, almost mirrors of each other, where your government doesn't represent the feelings of the general populace. They're absolutely blind. It's just incredible. And actually, just keeping with the Tories for a minute, I get a sense also that Johnson's up to something too, because he's gone off on holiday, on vacation, they call it in America, you call it. But he's cleared off right at the most critical time when the Conservative Party desperately needs a voice like that. Is he doing a deal in the background with Farage? Has he done a deal or hinted at a deal and then cleared off, keep out the way? And will we see him come back after the general election? Maybe come back as possibly a reform, possibly some new party that's developed as a merger between reform and the Conservatives. I mean, everybody's been looking after their own interests so much that we've got now what's happening is just a completely corrupt and completely lost opposition. Well, they will be the opposition, the future opposition. But under Labour, we've got exactly the same issues and the same worries, because the problem with them is they've not told us what they're doing, right? It's easy to say we're going to protect the NHS. It's easy to say we're going to look after education. It's easy to say we're going to do a new system for the borders and things like that, and all the rest of it, you know. And these things are easy to say, but they've not been explained. They've not been explained, for example, how they're going to be funded, because inevitably most Labour governments borrow money in order to make it work. So nothing's been explained about, are we going to have a huge debt after all this? And also the things I worry about are the cultural things, you know, apart from the fact that our taxes are likely to be raised. What about the cultural things? Nobody is addressing another thing that I think worries everybody, which is all this woke business. I mean, when you see Starmer interviewed, and he was pressed, I don't know if you remember, he was pressed hard about, can a woman have a penis? He would not answer that question whatsoever, you know. And he said, oh, well, people must have self-identification. The very thing really that tore apart the Scottish nationalists, you know, SNP, the fact that the wokeism had kind of destroyed that party, because again, they want to please everybody. And I think it gets hard when you see these politicians wriggling like they do when they're put under pressure. You start to think, hey, what are all these guys really about? You know, we don't have any common sense sort of people. We don't have any common sense leaders. So we look to people like Nigel Farage as being someone that actually speaks his mind, and everybody hates him as being sort of, they call him far right and racist and things like, they call him the next Enoch Powell. He liked Enoch Powell, didn't he? But it makes you wonder why is we're looking to leaders. People are wanting to find leaders that are strong. Same thing is happening with Donald Trump. We see him as a person that's being destroyed by the state system. They're trying to come in and use the weapons of the legal system against him. They're trying to destroy him by the back door. They're trying to financially destroy him. You know, these people in the background of our politics who are pulling all the strings, I think, are panicking, because the people of the nations are saying, we've had enough of this. And exactly the same thing's happening in Europe. This middle of the road committee sort of world that Europe has become. Now we're getting the rise of much more Le Pen and people like that, much more right wing, they would call it, but much more aggressive politics against the comfy sort of liberalism and this authoritarianism that has become with this liberalism and this global sort of deal that seems to be done with everybody. So, you know, I sound very, very right wing with what I'm saying, but it's kind of the way the world's thinking. This is what I'm trying to talk about here. It's become a scary world. I worry a great deal about when facts become offensive, when you're not allowed to sort of say a person's a man or a woman. I mean, you're offensive if you say that. If you say anything about what are the traditional values of our countries, Britain or America, we get exactly the same thing. We're considered as being some sort of bigot if we think about the original values that formed our countries. For example, in Britain here, and America's exactly the same, and Australia and Canada, founded on, and then India as well, and all of the British Empire, which we're not allowed to talk about because that's an evil thing, but they were founded on these ideas of British values, really. I know that the American values are completely different in many ways now, but things, for example, the great British achievement was tolerance. A great British achievement was equality before the law. And what an incredible thing that Britain came up with the idea of the common law. You know, and those things were picked up by America, transformed, changed, and morphed into the American system. But it was based upon some of these similar ideas. Same in Australia, same in Canada, and also the very powerful, important thing of freedom of speech. which is being destroyed very much, you know, because you can get cut off on YouTube and things like that, with Russell Brand and things slammed on because of, you know, not allowed to speak out too much, you know. And also another thing that has always been a great British value, surely, has also been religious tolerance, hasn't it? Tolerance towards other religions and things like that. And again, within the law, innocence until proved guilty. Right, similar thing in America. Doesn't apply to Donald Trump, of course. Guilty until proved innocent. But it seems like some of these fundamental values have been destroyed and undermined. This is one of my worries about the way things are going in the future. You know, like, again, I reaffirm, facts are offensive too. This is another thing, this cancel culture, you know. So we're seeing a whole complete sort of change of things at the moment here. And some of the questions that I was asked recently was things like, what's going to happen with how will these things affect be affected by artificial intelligence, for example? Because you're watching this show that you're watching now because you've probably watched something. It's popped up on your YouTube screen somewhere along the line. You might have watched my show before. You might have watched something similar to my show. You might have watched whatever, but you're getting fed stuff based upon your previous viewing history of things. So there's an algorithm in the background, and an algorithm is basically artificial intelligence in a way. It's the same sort of idea. Artificial intelligence has developed really out of this idea of an algorithm, that we look at stuff, we look at the whole picture and start to feed them new stuff. So, oh, this person might be interested in watching Craig, the Coffee with Craig, you know, so you get fed this stuff. But the problem is you get fed stuff that always conforms to the way you think. Right, so you might be seeing me because you've watched similar people with similar ideas. Now that's great in some respects, you know, great, you know, but why aren't you getting the opposite view all the time? Why aren't you getting more, you know, the opposite views to the things I put forward? Are you getting anything on your screen that's telling you that psychic stuff is a load of nonsense? Are you? You know, you're probably getting more stuff that's tolerant to what I say because it's what you like to watch. So we do have to get both sides of the argument all the time, but artificial intelligence skewers things. It's naturally, it has to skewer things. And if you use anything on these artificial intelligence apps, particularly I find with the things that develop images, for example, you'll end up with crazy wokey sort of politics being pushed in to everything, that everything has always been throughout history, multiculturalism, for example, which has not been the case. I mean, if you ask to do an Elizabethan scene, it'll all be multicultural. Now, those things are dodgy because we're changing our past. It's a bit like 1984, where they had the Ministry of Truth, and they change history so that nobody knows anything about history, so they can change the future too. So as far as people are concerned, there has never been anything other than Big Brother. So if you had Islam in control, there would have never been any history other than the history of Islam. That's why they destroyed all the historic sites when they went through and destroyed all the ancient sites, and remember them all blowing up all those beautiful things from ancient Babylon and so forth, you know. So we got to be so careful with this council culture that we're getting here, aren't we? It's so dangerous. It's so dangerous. And when we see things skewered, and with this extreme liberalism that we see in things like the BBC, and we see all our values being played with, and we see everything we kind of took for granted being completely changed. And at the same time, while all this is going on, and we have these weak sort of politics, we have the rise in the East, particularly with China, with kind of totalitarian regimes that have compromised capitalism, capitalistic totalitarian regimes in China, for example, where you can't speak out, where you can't be a Ouija person or whatever, you can't protest in Hong Kong, you know, all stomped on, all those values that I talked about being completely destroyed. And similarly around the world, what's going on, you know, I mean, we see, are these sometimes proxy wars going on? It almost feels like I'm in, lost my camera for a second. I almost feel like I'm in 1984. I thought the Ministry of Truth was on to me then. You know, we see terrible things going on in Ukraine, and it makes you wonder what political agendas are behind that. Who is behind this? What's going on? Same in Gaza, you know. I mean, we'll talk about that in a moment if you like. But anyway, I'm just feeding a few ideas here that our disconcern, our concern about how the world is kind of going wrong. Why is it we all have to loathe our countries? Why is it we all have to take on board things that we don't necessarily want? I mean, we've always been, like in Britain, like I say, a tolerant country, equality before the law, freedom of speech, a tolerance towards other religions and things. But now it's so swamped with these things that so many people have been getting disenchanted by these very values that we were built upon. Millions and millions of people are flooding into the Britain, for example, and millions are flooding into America. So these rules can't hold water anymore, because now we've got to become the third world countries that these people fled from. We've got to conform to them. They mustn't conform to us. You know, I think we want to have tolerance. We want to have that, but we can't if all the people that are paying for it, who've spent their life paying the taxes for these things, for example, now can't see a doctor or can't get basic dental help. Here in the UK, same thing happened in America. You can't everything you're paying for is paying from other people to get the benefits from. Okay, I'm sounding pretty bad here, I think, you know, but you know, I think I'm expressing what I think a lot of people are thinking, you know. And if you say anything like this, you're considered as being far right, and that's not the case, is it? We're not allowed to speak about things. We're not allowed to speak about what we say. We'll end up like some of these other countries where Pakistan, for example, though Imran Khan, I think he's still in prison, isn't he, while elections go on, you know, or it has only happened. I mean, we see Bangladesh with countries where you can't have an opposition and things. All around the world, this council thing is coming in. And I also add, AI is also part of this council thing, really. We'll only give people what they want. You know, we'll only give them what they want to see. We won't give them the questions. We won't make them think. We'll just keep everybody happy and feed them adverts. Okay, a few thoughts. Let's have a look at some of your comments now, guys. You might have all disappeared and see what you have to say. So have you got any thoughts? Have you got some comments? I'm going to just click a few randomly, actually, and see what you guys have to say here and what you want to sort of add or comment. I mean, I've been going off a bit here. What was that? My first one's come up. Please tell us something about. Oh, I've done that. So I've said a bit more about that. You can ask some more questions about that. Let's just go through a few. How can we? How do we contact you for personal QTNs? Oh, you can go to my website, psychics.co.uk. It's all in the description below for that type of thing. I'm doing a lot of workshops at the moment, actually. That's something you might enjoy, because that's kind of a group thing. Group readings I do, but group workshops and things, webinars they call them nowadays. But, you know, that's all on there. Sort of see a few hellos coming in there. And let's have your questions, actually, guys. No, right. That's not a bad one to think about, actually. Putin and North Korea. North Korea, of course, has become a very dodgy pariah state, but then so has Russia too, hasn't it? And when I saw Putin going in there, my thoughts immediately were, first of all, a deal's already been done before he's gone over there. I mean, in Ukraine, the Russians were running out of ammunition. And North Korea have been stockpiling stuff for centuries. So they just said, well, we'll do a deal. You can have these armaments. And what will we have? Well, first and foremost, we want Russian support. So we need Putin to come to the country, and we want it to be seen that we've got Russian support, so that if anything goes wrong, people are going to think twice, because Russia's on our side. But what else has been done in the background? Now, North Korea has had quite good success with its development of nuclear weapons, but it's had comparatively bad success with its delivery systems, with its rocket systems. It's had some successes, but could it fire a missile all the way to Japan and hit target? Could it fire a missile all the way to as far afield as Australia or something, or far right over to, particularly over to California? Could it do a high speed delivery rocket that couldn't be shot down easily? Not yet. Could Russia do it? probably struggles still nowadays with the defense systems, but it could. Now, I think there's been a deal done in North Korea, and we'll probably see something come to the press eventually, but these are all top secret stuff going on. And they probably know about it. The CIA and all the rest of them must know about it. But there is definitely a deal being done there in the background. There's been a deal done. And I think the missile systems are going in there, and we even had this is kind of reminiscent of Cuba. I think Putin said something or other. This isn't Cuba, but I mean, it is, isn't it? Isn't this like the Cuban Missile Crisis? What if we had Kim Jong-un with all his with nuclear delivery system that could threaten everywhere, including China? Because it would be kind of handy, wouldn't it, for Russia to see China looking both ways. Because although China and Russia have done deals and are still doing deals, because Russia's buying technology from China all over this Ukraine business, I said years ago that there'd be that Russian weapons and technology would be shared between China and Russia. So there's a big deal being done over, all stimulated by this Ukrainian war, which we let it happen, didn't we? He let him go into Crimea and didn't stop him and just, oh, well, it's Russia going in. The next thing they have a bit more and a bit more. Putin would love to see the old USSR rebuilt. And he's getting an older man now. He wants to see this. He's a bit like Netanyahu, who wants to sort of think, I want to do all those things I should have done in life, And most of us would want to go traveling or go and see the world or something. No, I want to storm into these countries. And so we've got two rather mixed up individuals in some ways that are trying to finish their legacy. He wants to go down in history. It's all about power with people like Putin. And that whole Ukraine war thing, when will it end, we all ask? I don't think it will end until we see Putin dead. And after Putin, I feel that that will be followed by somebody equally as bad in some respects. But ultimately, longer term, I see Russia becoming a much more benign sort of country, and even with a female president eventually one day. But I don't know when that'll be. I just see it in the future sometime. Okay, let's have a look what else you're coming up here. You're chatting between yourselves. Well, French elections, actually, I feel I've said before, I think we're going to see the end of Macron. I feel he's going to go. Eventually, I think I've said it before as well. I think Le Pen is going to come in very, very strong, possibly with I don't know quite how the French elections work, but possibly with some form of coalition or so forth. Again, people are not being listened to. The ordinary common person in France is not being listened to, and these policies are being thrust upon people. So I think I basically French elections, Macron out. The whole world's upside down now, and is anywhere safe, Craig? Is there going to be a recession in the UK? Well, I think we will see a bit of probably a bit of a climb to begin with, but I think it will fall apart. I think we'll start overspending, and we'll get an initial boost to the economy, because when you're borrowing money and spending it, it looks like everything's doing well. Everybody starts spending a bit more, and it goes up. But hanging in the background, we've got a need for an interest rate cut, because people with mortgages are desperate. People want to see their mortgages come down. But then we've also got the demon of inflation in the background, which is not being addressed and has been kicked down the road. So that's going to hit us hard. So I think in the UK, we're going to get inflation. More importantly, though, worldwide, what's going to happen? Because economically, I feel it's all kind of propped up on sticks. I feel almost like one of those Salvador Dali pictures, like where it's all these melting figures are pushed up on sticks. It feels like it's all propped up and it's all ready to fall over. And particularly the cryptocurrency markets. When you think about that, I mean, people don't think about history. But history, I was taught about the South Sea bubble, I remember, and I had to do that as one of my history questions, and it still sticks in my mind. Most people forget what it's all about. But people were basically investing in companies in the South Seas throughout the British Empire and pouring their money into it, thinking, oh, these are booming. And they're just investing into pieces of paper. They're even into companies that didn't exist. exactly the same thing what cryptocurrency is all about. It's safety bubble all over again. Everybody's investing into something that doesn't exist. It's an illusionary type of thing. It's just a piece of software. And it's only while people are investing does it work. And if you keep pouring your money in, it works, and more people put money in, and it works. But when people stop putting their money in, it falls to pieces. And I think it's in danger of that lot collapsing, because it's a great place to launder money and hide money, and people that don't pay their or don't want to terrorist money can go into it, and people that don't want to pay their child support put their money into cryptocurrency and hide it away, sort of thing. But eventually it all can cave in, I think that. And I think we're going to see some serious cave-ins in the British not the British, but the world economy. Now, I still haven't done the 2025 predictions. I need to tune in for these things. It's not things I can just pull out of the air. I don't know everything. I have to wait till I'm given it. But I still have a bit of a feeling of foreboding towards the end of 2025, particularly worldwide. And I feel that we're going to get some quite serious issues with that. And like I said, in my Japanese stuff, if you watch my Japanese one, my feeling is that there's going to be some major earth shift of some sort. Something's going to happen. I felt it might be off Japan and affect California and the whole Pacific. I'm seeing something happening with that that's going to be serious. It's going to affect world economies big time. Timing these things is so hard, but I do feel it's coming. And I timing it is so difficult. But I feel that at some point that's going to happen, and that's when there's going to be a pop with things. And things like you do Dubai and things like that. That is also another area where there's huge potential difficulties. Huge investments in things, but not really sustainable. So I think we're going to be some rocky paths ahead. As we go ahead. I think the health system in the England is coming down. Is going to continue. Even when you get a left-leaning government in power, which I think probably likely to with Labour, how much money can you pour into it? Because the problem is it's unsustainable at the moment, because we got the whole health system here in the UK has fallen to pieces because we've got so many people coming in. This is how I see it anyway, and I think it's common sense, really. It is so many people coming into the country who haven't put a penny into the system, taking out vast amounts. When you go to, if you've never seen anybody in hospital ill, I remember when my dad had bone cancer. It was a terrible illness, and they'd say, and his bones started to snap and things like that, and they'd because he had this strontium treatment that basically meant all the bones broke. And when you were talking to the doctors and things, you say, oh, God, how much did that operation cost? Just a simple, £100,000. What? And he's had dozens of these. So one person, a dad, I hope, you would spend any amount, wouldn't you, to see someone stop their suffering? Hundreds and hundreds of thousands of pounds every operation. And this is happening to people that are coming in who've never put a penny into the system. But my dad was a businessman. He always used to say to me, one day, Craig, all these debts will be yours. So I'm not so sure he was a man that put as much into the system as some, but I'm sure he did through his life. But we all put in. But the problem is there's too many. So I think the national health system is going to absolutely cave in. What's going to have to happen is more and more of it's going to have to go over to private health. And there will be much more and I think there will be much more incentive put onto people coming into the country that have only been here a short while to say you must have health insurance. You can't just get national insurance. But I don't see the Labour government doing this. You would need something to say, look, you can't immediately expect all the benefits of Britain just by setting foot in Britain, coming over on a boat and setting foot in Britain. That's not fair. Firstly, on other immigrants that come into the country have come through the legitimate system, but then the same guy that just breaks in gets it. You can't say a robber can have the same amount as someone that's done it legitimately. And it's not fair also on the people that have been contributing all their lives into the national health system. So really, people that are coming into the country, and I don't know whether this will happen under Labour, I don't think it will, but we will see Labour ultimately, I think, will pop as well. People will turn against Labour because they'll suddenly realise what Labour is all about. I think we'll get a merging of the Tories and we'll get a merging of the Tories and the Reform. will have a very strong opposition, and a lot of the things that we hold dear about national health and things are going to be highly questioned. And immigration, which is really, I think, for many people, the top issue, which has been totally ignored because it's too hot a potato for anyone to actually give any really address, because they're going to isolate some of their voters. I think we're going to see absolute implosion. And it's same issues in America too, isn't it? Because you can't just have open borders. It's just madness. It's destroying all of the countries of the world. And the danger is none of the politicians are really prepared to talk about it. They just want to think, let's hope it goes away. Actually, these people coming into our country on another level, we need them because we need workers. But do we really want countries that are endlessly struggling for growth? Can't we do things in a different way? I see in the future too that I think we'll have a whole new way of looking at money, because the way money's working at the moment is likely to pop. The whole system's likely to cave in. When it does, I think we'll come out of that with a new way of looking at money. I'm not quite sure how it's going to be, but it's like money's going to be different somehow. That's how I see things. And also, I see working time also being very different. Why should we all work from Monday to Friday and then have the weekends off? We're getting much more flexibility in time, but that was all devised for the Victorian factory system. You work Monday to Friday, you have Saturday, which is your one day off, and Sundays for church. And the rest of it, and we've had that system for a long time. We need something new. And why should people have to work so long? So I think we're going to start looking into new ways of doing things. We've had the development of industry. People won't have to work so hard because we'll have machines to do it for us. We still work just as hard. We have the innovation of internet and computers and IT. People won't have to work so hard. We're all working harder than ever. We got the innovation now of artificial intelligence. That'll do all the thinking for us. And we still work as hard as ever. We've got something wrong because a few people take the lot, don't they? And everybody else, the common person, is left as the worker ant still. There's something wrong in the system. I think we will get a change because people aren't getting fed up with it. It is, as someone here is saying, and I don't know if you're intentionally all rigged. Everything's intentionally all rigged against us. I'm just pulling up. So saying reform for a protest vote. But it could be more than that if enough people voted, but it would have to be a huge swing for that to change. And this is a good point. Tories and Labour are now both globalists. They're not for the indigenous people, and you mean for those I suppose the people that have been in Britain for the most of the time, the Anglo-Saxon people, but also it's not just the indigenous, as it were, people in the UK that are saying this. It's also the people that have come in here and integrated well. I mean, Reform, for example, have just had a big donations put in by people that have come from Indian heritage. I mean, they are just as upset as the rest of us because it's destabilizing what was a very system that really worked with those basic British values that I talked about, that also apply to other countries in the world in exactly the same way, but just refined in different ways. And we're not allowed to be proud of those things. We're not allowed to be proud of the fact that Britain was the first country to come up with something like the Magna Carta, which started to give rights to people. We're the first really solid legal system. I know it also appeared in Iceland had the first parliament, for example, but Britain was the first democracy that could be exported around the world because it had empire. And the Industrial Revolution that came from Britain. Well, all those things are marvelous things, aren't they? Why should we all loathe our countries? And why should any country loathe itself? We've all had good and bad. It's like people. People are a mix of good and bad, but we've got to look to the good in it. All the countries of the world have something to offer, and that's what's good about the diversity of different nations. You could not have had in Britain, you could not have had the wonderful things that developed in India develop in Britain because it didn't have the spiritual thing. So Britain developed one thing, India develops another thing, China developed other brilliant ideas, the Arab world developed tremendous things. Our mathematics and that we use at the moment comes from there. We should be proud of our nations, each one of us, but see us as all, but when you mix it all up and you throw in so many people, and those people are saying, look, we don't want your culture, we want our system that's based on religion, or we don't want you're a load of slave makers. Why come here then if you feel like that? So this is the problem. I hate to talk about immigration because I believe in tolerance of all people, but it has become a major issue. And the same, with Australia's got the same problem. Though you've got really strict rules, you've got really strict rules there compared to us, and yet it still don't work. And you don't like Boris Johnson. I was talking about him earlier. No, he's a bit of a traitor on lots of levels. And so many of them were in the Tory parties, weren't they? All stabbing each other in the back. But I reckon he has done a deal. Some of you are pleased with the idea. Yes, Boris would do a deal. And I think there's something going on in the background there. So you're obviously picking up on some of my earlier quotes, And a big backlash against woke. I mean, I did say that last year when I was doing my predictions. I felt that woke is going to be one of the issues that we're all going to turn against, and it's so endemic. I mean, look at the way it's destroyed Hollywood. What a lot of twits they've become, and what a lot of rubbish we watch on movies being produced. When I look and I'm watching movies on screen nowadays, I have to go through and try to find something decent to watch. I'm going to watch Don't Look Now with Donald Sutherland, but you don't get great movies like that anymore, do you? That the great actors and the great directors and the great writers all gone. It's got a load of wokey, silly nonsense now when you watch Netflix and the rest. Just all one movie spread out into 2,000 episodes. Yeah. Yeah, it's just to look at a few more. Most Labour voters have switched to Reform. I don't know about that. I think a lot will have, because it's not left or right, is it? It's people need a leader of some sort. That's where it seems to go wrong. And the danger is, you see, people say Farage, he's really right wing, he's really bad, he's racist and so forth. But my God, he's not. He's still quite middle road, really. The problem is if you squash all this and you hide it down, you do get people on the real, what we would call the far right. Anything that's against the liberal agenda, liberalist sort of liberal sort of authoritarian agenda, is always considered as wrong, as far right and racist. It's not. It's middle ground. Will you wait? If you don't ignore this issue, it'll come back and it'll fester and it'll grow into something where you could get something very dangerous. People say the same about Trump. He's so extreme, but he's not that extreme. You could get something far, far more extreme because it's this pendulum swung two-way into this wokey sort of world that I think the general person in this world is fed up with it, right? I still don't know what that. I said a woman a while back, and there's no women in the running at the moment, but I said a woman of color a long time ago. Let's see. I think he'll still select a woman for his VP, and there's a few options. They seem to be the outsiders, but I still feel that he'll have a woman there. He always does things that surprise you, Trump. He never goes the way that people anticipate, and I think that's why he works on the world stage, because they think, well, this guy could nuke us tomorrow, or we might do a deal. We better make a deal, so that those things are interesting. I'll just take a couple more. God, so many of you guys writing here, I can hardly keep up with it. There's thousands and thousands of comments. Yeah, he does quite a lot of the time look ill, doesn't he? I mean, I don't think it will go until. I think he's been masking an illness for a long time. I mean, a few people have said that before me. Yeah. Okay, so lots of hellos and things and. Okay, I'm finding it a bit hard because you're commenting between yourselves so much and saying hello to each other. We're getting a little bit of a community here. It's like looking into a chat room into my. You're kind of commenting between yourselves now. So I think that's probably time to call an end, actually, guys, because it's nice to come in and sort of just have a general sort of chat with you like this. I mean, this isn't one of my normal coffee with Craigs. It's just a sort of a general chat, and I think it's quite interesting to do that. Always happy if you guys can comment in the as well, because it's become a little bit of a community, this, and although I don't always reply to the comments, I do read every single one. So when you sort of say, and even the ones that are against me are fine, I read all those. So, and if you want to interconnect with me, of course, I'm doing my workshops now, or my webinars as partly, and I'm doing one on NAADIs at the moment, which is going to be quite interesting. I'll share with you some of the things the NAADI said to me, and I've got a few people coming in on that who've had their NAADI readings through this website. And if you want a NAADI reading, it's in the description below. They're open again, so I can get you through quite quick now. If you do respond now, we get little windows of it sometimes, so it's a good time if you want that right now. I can't promise, because sometimes you get a flood, but the NAADI readings are open again, and we've got readers available for that. And we'll be discussing some of that in the webinar that I've got, but always make sure you connect to the right one, because I've also got a couple of webinars on there, as it were, where I'm just doing group readings, and that's fun too, because it's not just readings. I try to teach a bit about mediumship as well. And if you become a member on the YouTube channel, you can always ask me questions, or you've got the option to become a patron. We've got both systems on there. The patron stuff is purely charitable. The YouTube membership is that money helps support this channel. Anyway, all right, there's a few things at the end of adverts and things, and go and buy my books as well, because I always forget to mention them. So thanks for joining me today, guys. It's really nice to connect with you again. Put your thoughts in there as well, and any questions you want that I have not addressed today, put them in, because I'll try to do a few more specific YouTubes on topics you raise. I'll be away on vacation some of the time. We won't be doing a Craig and Jane show tonight, hence the one I'm doing today as well, because we're getting into the silly season with holidays for people, and we've not always got our team with us. But anyway, good to see you all. I'll shut up now, and I'll see you soon. So bye for now. If you look back at my earlier predictions, and in particular the predictions I made on the newspaper, the Sun's website, I did actually say on there, the actual words were, there will be a flu epidemic linked to bioterrorism.
And my thoughts are that Liz Truss will make it to the final, be the next PM. I think she will actually have a final battle between her and Rishi Sunak. We've not seen the full end of Boris Johnson either, I tell you. But Rishi Sunak actually will eventually, I feel, be the next leader of the Conservatives. So I think there's going to be a few conflicts that Britain's going to be drawn into, including I think Russia is going to take some moves against Ukraine. I think she will make it past her platinum jubilee, which comes up this year. But I think after that, we'll see a sudden and quick deterioration in the Queen's health. And I think we might lose the Queen towards the end of 2022. There's going to be a huge backlash from over the Netflix programs and screening, because I feel it comes out at a bad time. Charles will come to become King Charles, but his reign, I feel, will be short. I said that Prince Charles would be hit by an egg. And of course, there it is, all in the press today. Marvellous person she is. She does something that extraordinary, that could even put her life a little bit at risk with the way she did this. Okay.
Is there something also there that's not been spoken about fully? Did they also discover something with Kate that wasn't quite right?
A huge swarm of people knocking the doors of Europe and America. And I feel that Ukraine conflict is going to be a kind of a grinding conflict that goes on and on. I also feel that there's something going to happen in the Middle East as well. I feel as if there's going to be a sudden and unexpected thing happen in the Middle East. So I feel they're going to take it into their own hands, and I feel we're going to get a strike from Israel. This is going to be one of the significant things in 2023.